Hey, Queen's Voice, how are you? Peter Kafalis here. Today we are sitting down with an attorney who has taken the state and the city to court regarding the shutdown and the mandates with the health crisis that we went through recently. I'm here with James Mermigis.
Nice to meet you,
Nice
Pete.
to meet you.
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen the gentleman before, he's been on a lot of news channels. Probably not the biggest fan the governor and the mayor have, but he has taken him to court. He's taken folks to court. There was an Amish couple we were just talking about that they mandated a vaccine, but he's also represented a waitress at Yankee Stadium for 17 years that had a vaccine issue. Many other cases. So, James, tell us basically, you're known as the anti-shutdown attorney.
Yes.
Tell us basically a little bit about what you've been doing and why some of the leaders in this city and state don't like you.
Well, good afternoon. Nice. Thanks for having me. This all started back in, well, first of all, in 2019, is the state of New York removed the religious exemption from the mandatory vaccinations for children. So I got involved in that, and we filed a repeat. We filed a lawsuit to overturn it. We filed a lawsuit actually in Steuben County, New York. If you're ever up in that area, you don't know if you're in New York or in Oklahoma. It's doesn't even has no semblance to New York. So we filed a lawsuit. We had a very a judge that was, you know, that was definitely sympathetic. And if you read the decision, it was like about 11 pages, 10 and a half pages. You think he's going to rule in our favor. Then at the end, he said, motion denied. So we were stunned. We did a motion to re-argue because we felt that we had the arguments to win the case. So that was about a month later. Again, he called us into his chambers and basically said, my hands are tied. Had tears in his eyes, the judge, and that was it. He denied the motion to re-argue as well. So that's when I started doing really constitutional law in 2019. And then in 2020, as we all know, COVID came. We had the wonderful Governor Cuomo who said, oh, we're going to lock down everybody 2 weeks, to protect against the spread. My wife and I, all right, 2 weeks, that's doable, that's reasonable, right?
Sure.
But then 2 weeks turned into 1 month, then 2 months, then 3 months, then 4 months, 5 months. Finally, people were flipping out. They were, especially the middle class and the mom and pop shops that were shut down. It was ironic that Target and Walmart were able to open with no restrictions.
Home Depot?
Home Depot had thousands of people in there, but I guess that wasn't a threat. But a mom and pop restaurant, shop, hardware store, bicycle shop, liquor store, they were all threats. So the first people that I represented actually in the COVID shutdowns were in New Jersey. The Tillis Gym guys that were fighting Governor Murphy. We basically filed a lawsuit in federal court there, to open up the gym. They were shut down for a while, and these guys were meticulous. They had
That was a big story.
yeah,
Very
they
big story.
had air scrubbers. They had temperature when you walk in to see if you had any symptoms. I mean, these guys were very detailed and very planned. And to be honest with you, they had prepped their gym up perfectly to open up and nobody will get COVID. And we put all those arguments into paper. We filed a lawsuit against the state of New Jersey and Governor Murphy in federal court. I believe it was either in Camden, I think, wherever was close. It might have been Camden or Trenton. And the judge was definitely receptive. But the end, this is a state court issue, so he sent the case to state court. Um, Even though it was a federal issue because the Constitution was being violated, he says, I disagreed with the decision, but that's what he did. So after that, I got calls from gym owners in New York State. And we had several hundred gym owners that were shut down. And we decided that we were going to file a class action against Governor Cuomo. And it was funny because right before I was hired to file the lawsuit against Governor Cuomo for the gyms, Governor Cuomo went on, you know, gyms will never be open. They're disgusting. Um, you could transfer the virus very easily in a gym. I'm not opening up gyms. That's what Governor Cuomo said back in 2020. It might have been July 2020. So we filed our class action lawsuit towards the end of July, and we found a gym in upstate New York in Jefferson County to file the lawsuit, just to get away from New York, to maybe we have a fairer playing field if we go
Outside the city.
outside of New York City. So we filed it up there, and I'll never forget. We were waiting for a response from the Attorney General of the state of New York. She kept on delaying. She said, "Oh, can you give me a couple more days to put the response?" So we had a hearing set from like mid-August, where we were going to have a hearing whether the gyms could open. So the day before the hearing, I get a phone call from the Attorney General's office, and they said, "Jim, hold on. Governor Cuomo is going to make an announcement on Monday opening up all the gyms."
Wow.
So, you know, we ended up stipulating to adjourn the hearing for a couple days, make sure that he would make this, announcement. So what happens? He makes an announcement, Governor Cuomo, I believe it was a Friday night, that all gyms will be open in like 2 weeks.
So the threat was enough to get him to bend.
Yeah.
Good.
And so he opened up the gyms. I know that a lot of it had to do with my lawsuit and the fact that we're having a hearing. In addition, he did say that he would never open the gyms. So he opened up the gyms. And then once we got the gyms open, then I got calls from every other business.
Bars,
Restaurants,
pool halls,
strip clubs, every business imaginable. Entertainment places were birthday parties, like big places
Sure.
that had entertainment venues. So slowly and slowly, we started. My next lawsuit, I believe, I represented Il Bacco in Little Neck, in Queens, and that he was an interesting guy, Joe, the owner. Everybody knows him in Queens. Everybody knows Il Bacco in Queens, and the irony about that case was he had 3 floors, okay, he was not using because there was no indoor dining in New York City.
It's a big facility.
Yeah, and he could only use the roof because it was outdoor.
Wow.
Okay, but meanwhile, if you drive 500 yards or 500 feet east of Il Bacco, was Great Neck.
You could do a lot more.
Great Neck was allowed. You were allowed to have indoor dining in Great Neck. So I guess the state's theory was that Il Bacco is located in Little Neck. You can catch COVID indoors if you eat in Little Neck, but once you drive another 500 feet east, you cannot get COVID if you eat indoors.
So our neighbors in Nassau County had some special protection.
Yeah. So there was like the COVID genie that was helping the people out in Nassau County, but if you ate indoors in Queens, it was illegal.
Which was very silly.
So it was an absurd argument. And then we filed the lawsuit for Il Bacco, and then again about a week or two later after the lawsuit was filed, Governor Cuomo opens up indoor dining for New York City. He limited it to 25% initially, but all my clients that were in New York City, they would take it. It was better than nothing.
Sure.
Because they were shut down since March.
And lost a lot of revenue.
A lot of revenue. So we got another favorable decision for Governor Cuomo, and then more businesses started contacting me to open up. I got contacted by Madison Square Garden as a consultant. They hired me to see how we could get Radio City open and a lot of their smaller venues open because they were struggling as well because they were shut down. I represented pool halls. I represented off-Broadway theaters, which was an interesting battle. In fact, one of the main person that I represented, her name was Catherine. She was an actress in an off-Broadway show. She was called the Cal Ripken of Broadway because she hadn't missed a show for like 30 years.
Till the lockdowns.
Till the
Yeah.
lockdowns. So, yeah, and along the way, I met some incredible people from the city. From most of my clients were in the city because I believe that the city had the most restrictions as opposed to the rest of the state.
Oh yeah.
But we were able to file lawsuits on behalf of everybody: Broadway theaters, strip clubs, restaurants. And then when restaurants wanted to go to 50% instead of 25%, we'd file another lawsuit. The Broadway theaters, the entertainment centers, places that have, where you go in and they have bouncies and all these other
For the
things
kids.
for birthday
Yeah.
parties. So we were very successful. It became almost comical that every time that we were ready to go for a hearing, the governor would open up the premises or whatever the venues were that we were
And this
suing.
is Cuomo you're speaking about.
This is Governor Cuomo.
Okay.
And he's much more reasonable than Hochul. Hochul's an absolute nut.
We would talk about that off camera. Tell the viewers if you don't mind. I know you had a few examples you just discussed where the threat of litigation was enough to get Cuomo to come to his senses and
Yeah.
do a Friday night press release, which
Yeah.
But what is the difference between him and now Miss Hochul, who is now the governor and the most powerful person in the state? What's your personal opinion, so our viewers know?
Governor Hochul, Cuomo is reasonable. Listen, at the end, I'll give you the biggest example between Governor Cuomo and Governor Hochul. Late August of 2021, or beginning August 2021, Governor Cuomo announced that there'll be a COVID-19 vaccine mandate for all healthcare workers in the state of New York. He announced it early August of 2021. During the same time, I think this is very important, and I've made this argument in all my lawsuits and whatnot. Rochelle Walensky, who's the head of the CDC, announced in August 2021 that the COVID vaccine does not prevent transmission of the virus. Why is this important? If a vaccine does not prevent transmission of the virus, it's just a medical treatment.
What's the point?
Like, it's not a vaccine. Therefore, if it doesn't prevent transmission, there shouldn't be any mandates.
I agree.
Okay? Governor Cuomo said when he announced there'll be an accommodation for religious beliefs and an accommodation for a medical issue. 2 weeks later, Cuomo gets removed and Hochul comes in. Hochul says there's no more religious accommodations for the COVID-19
Just like that.
for healthcare workers.
Wow.
She totally did a 360 off what Governor Cuomo did. And
And just 2 weeks later.
2 weeks later, and said there will be some exceptions for medical accommodations, but every healthcare worker must get the vaccine, otherwise, they're going to be terminated. So I also think it's ironic that they did the mandate at this point in time, or comical, because the vaccine was available since December of 2020.
Yeah.
Okay, so for 9 months, everybody was working in a hospital without any issues, without the vaccine, with masking or testing. Now, all of a sudden, it was so important that everybody had to get the vaccine, otherwise they would get terminated. So how do you explain for 9 months, since the vaccine was available? If it was such an issue, they should have gave the vaccine to healthcare workers immediately when it was available. No, let's wait 9 months, then we'll make the announcement. Who cares what the head of the CDC says? She doesn't matter. This is New York. We're going to mandate it whether you like it or not. And that's what happened. And that created a big problem because I had a lot of healthcare workers. I had a line out the door initially when it was announced for religious exemptions, accommodations.
Sure.
Basically consulting, talking to people about their religion to see if it would qualify for religious accommodation. So they came for me for consultations. Line out the door. The biggest healthcare workers, the highest amount that I had in my office were emergency room nurses.
Wow.
And the reason being is they saw the damage that the vaccine was doing to people
Firsthand.
firsthand. They were firsthand there. I believe there was one Northwell Health out east in Riverhead. The entire emergency floor, I almost had them all here as clients
Jesus
because
Christ.
they saw what was going on with the vaccine. They were scared. They wanted to know options about medical or religious accommodation. So this was real. A lot of people were threatened. People that worked for for years in these hospitals were now all of a sudden being threatened that you either get the vaccine or you leave. And in
Well, the city
addition,
workers as well, right?
yeah,
The cops and the
well,
firemen.
yeah, we'll get to the city workers. But the first people that were threatened were the healthcare
ER
workers.
yeah.
The healthcare, it was only doctors, anybody who worked in a hospital. Even if you were a security guard,
Everybody.
you had to get it. So thousands and thousands of people refused to get it and either lost their jobs, moved out of state,
Or hired you.
or hired me. But the problem was because they removed the religious exemption, you couldn't really make a constitutional claim because if you can't file for religious exemption because the state removed it.
So they took that away to basically put you in a box.
Exactly. But the argument could have been back then that since the vaccine did not prevent transmission, it was a medical treatment, and you do have a constitutional right to, constitutional right not to get specific medical treatments if you don't want them. So it got really, really ugly. We had thousands of healthcare workers leaving the states. There were shortages, especially in Western New York.
Well, remember,
where
they were asking
hospitals-
nurses to come from other states.
Yeah,
Paying them big
exactly,
money. Yeah.
exactly. So that was that. Then New York City, in September of 2021, announces their city mandate, not only for public employees.
That was still de Blasio, correct?
Yeah,
Mayor de Blasio.
yeah.
Okay.
Mayor de Blasio's private employers and public employees. So if you worked in a law firm,
Real estate office. I
a-
remember that, yeah.
anybody who worked in New York City was subject to a COVID-19 mandate. And initially it was the private. I helped consulted with many people to get religious exemptions or medical exemptions. So pretty much the private employers were not as bad. The city was bad. They were just firing people without getting the shots.
Yeah, we saw the news every day. Somebody was getting axed.
Yep. And so I believe end of October of 2021, all city employees had to show proof of vaccination. So a lot of employees, for instance, cops, I represented a lot of cops, they were allowed to file for religious or medical accommodation. And the irony of it all is they were allowed to work while their accommodation requests were pending. And I think this is ironic because that's your accommodation. If they're allowed to work and they mask or test every week, that's your accommodation under law. You're right there. You're proving that you can accommodate them by allowing them to work. And they still got, if their religious exemptions were denied, they were given 5 days. You either get the vaccine in 5 days or you're terminated.
That's it.
That's it.
Wow.
You were given 5 days. And I helped over 100 cops when they got their termination letters, 5 days. Within those 5 days, we filed Article 78s contesting the city's decision and a temporary restraining order staying the termination until the Article 78 was heard. So we were able to save during that crucial time over 100 NYPD cops from getting fired, from getting terminated. And then we ended up winning also the Article 78s because their decisions on their beliefs were arbitrary and capricious. The only thing it said on their decision is does not meet criteria. When an agency, state, local, makes a decision regarding your employment, they have to explain why you're getting fired or why your religious accommodation request did not satisfy their prerequisites.
So they need to explain the denial
Yeah,
why.
yeah. Instead of explaining why, they just said does not meet criteria.
That's it.
That's it.
And
So
as a lawyer who's been doing this a while, you must have been like,
I'm like,
really?
this is golden. I'm like, so all these does not meet criteria. Every one of them got TROs. There was one judge that initiated the process, Judge Bluth in New York City. She's an amazing judge, follows the letter of the law. And she granted TROs, she granted the Article 78s, and then everybody followed through. All the judges in Queens, in Brooklyn, in Staten Island, in the Bronx. So we had cases in every borough, and we all ended up winning all these cases. I saved over 100 jobs at least for mostly cops. There were other attorneys, a colleague of mine, Christina Martinez, she was doing mostly firemen, and another colleague, Jimmy Wagner, was doing teachers. So
those are the big three I remember. Teachers, fire, and police.
Yeah. So and that was a battle, and then eventually I did file a big lawsuit against the city of New York and Eric Adams.
Who's the current mayor after
Yeah,
the lawsuit? Just
current
so our
mayor.
viewers are up to date. Okay.
Yeah. And basically there was some leaked Project Veritas interviews where they were randomly, city employees were saying there's no means or method, we're just granting them, who gives an F. and basically I used all that
As ammunition.
I said, look, you might not know it, but you're playing with people's lives. So we filed a class action lawsuit to end the mandate, the COVID-19 mandate. 2 weeks later, Eric Adams ends the mandate. But I still had all these unemployed people in the lawsuit, and we're still pursuing it further because I want all these people to be reinstated. The city's saying, oh, they could be reinstated, but they're going to go back to their introductory position as if they're starting.
So you lose
fresh.
a rank and salary
Yeah.
and seniority.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
doesn't sound fair.
No, it doesn't sound fair at all. So that's the problem now. So that case is still pending to reinstate all these employees. There's about, I would say, 75 people in the lawsuit that still are not working.
So
that
they're
want
limbo.
in limbo.
They're not getting unemployment. They're not getting anything.
No, and here's the thing. Nobody got unemployment because the employers were saying that it was misconduct if you refused the COVID-19 vaccine.
Because that was their rules.
Yeah, that was the misconduct.
Sounds like you're in grade school. You wear
Yeah.
a hat and you go to detention, or you wear shorts.
It was actually, abominable when you think about it. Somebody doesn't want to get the vaccine for whatever reason, medical, religious. They don't get the vaccine, they're fired, or their accommodation requests were wrongfully denied. And then if they apply for unemployment, they're told that you can't get unemployment because you committed misconduct in the workplace.
Wow.
It's what I've seen since COVID. I just hope that it's like just a blip on the screen, and we could all move on from this. But I really, really hope that things change, because this state and the city is turning socialism and communism.
You're 100% correct.
And
Power
people,
grab by our elected officials.
yeah, people don't have free choice anymore. And listen, I supported the people who didn't want the vaccine, but I also support my friends who took the vaccine. I believe it should be a free choice. It should be free will. Everybody's entitled to do their own research and decide whether or not they want this vaccine.
But not a mandate from Big Brother.
Not a mandate to tell you to take it, and you have a mortgage and you have 3 kids, you maybe have a kid in college, and they're telling you that you need to get it, otherwise you're going to lose your employment.
So they're bankrupting people.
Yeah, that's
taking
wrong.
your earning away.
And that's why we saw a mass exodus of people from the state of New
And
York.
it's still continuing to this day.
Still continues to this day. I can't tell you how many people moved to Florida, Tennessee,
Carolinas,
Texas.
everywhere but here.
and the reason is is because people want liberties, people want freedoms. There are no more liberties in New York. New York is do as I say, or else you're going to be in trouble. They don't give you a choice.
No, I agree with you 100%. Now, speaking of that, I want to just touch on two things and just your personal, and maybe if you could just tell us what your clients had told you.
Yeah.
There were two things that we saw a lot of hypocrisy. We were seeing how dangerous it was: 6 feet, mask up, vaccine, just to name a few. But then we saw folks like the governor prior to Murphy, who was sitting on a beach that was supposedly closed for safety reasons. He had the whole beach to himself. We saw Newsom in California eating at a big restaurant, 12, 20 people at a big table,
Yeah.
no masks. So it was basically do as I say, not as I do.
Hey.
And then the second thing I just wanted you to touch on, what was your personal feelings and maybe some of your clients, if you could share that, where we're letting in millions of people through our southern border, unmasked, unvaccinated, and they're not checking, not even a temperature, but you or I, to go into a dentist office, I had to get my temperature taken. You had to fill out a 3-page questionnaire. Are you coughing? Do you have a nasal drip or anything like that? So the hypocrisy, what were you thinking, or what do you think, and your clients, what was their feedback when all that stuff was going on?
Listen, when COVID first came out, obviously we were all concerned. My family was concerned. You know, and it's funny, my clients did not reach out to me until 3 or 4 months after COVID, okay, when they couldn't take it anymore.
Sure.
You know, a lot of these people, they followed the rules for 3, 4 months, but then they saw hypocrisies. Like, for instance, like Governor Murphy, like you said, or Governor Newsom at that restaurant in San Francisco. You know, so once people start seeing the hypocrisies,
Well,
then
millions of people at the southern border without a mask or a vaccine. It's crazy.
and so people started waking up. I started waking up because, listen, initially I was scared. I'm not going to lie to you.
Me too.
I didn't know what to expect. You know, it seemed like it was a scary, scary disease. I did end up getting COVID twice, and the
3
first,
times.
yeah, and I passed it, but I took ivermectin also. I know it was banned in New York State, or it was frowned upon to take it, but ivermectin absolutely helped me tremendously with the COVID virus.
And without getting another state in trouble, you were able to go to another state and pick it up.
No, actually, we were getting shipments in from
Okay.
yeah, and some pharmacies did give it out here in New York State, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah, believe it or not. So, the border, we're letting thousands of people in.
Hourly.
We're not vetting any of these people. We don't know if they're terrorists. We don't know what they are. Listen, I believe in the American dream. My parents pursued the American dream. They came here from Greece for a better life. Okay? So I believe
Sure.
in immigrants. I think immigrants is what makes America so great. You know, we have different cultures, different ethnicities, different viewpoints, but you have to do it legally.
Agreed.
You have to do it legally. We don't know who these people are. We don't know if they're terrorists from the Middle East.
Are they sick?
Are they sick? We have migrant crises now in New York City, where they've kicked kids out of schools to house migrants. We're putting them in hotels. We've had
5-star hotels.
Yeah, we have instances now of migrants being disrespectful
Shooting
to
police.
police,
Shooting
and
them,
and nobody's vetting these people. And the company, basically, our country's a joke right now.
Yes.
And to be honest, I wish Trump finished that wall, because I think we would have kept some people out. I'm not saying that. I'm sure there are very good people that want to come into this country, and as long as they do it legally, that I don't have an issue with that. Immigrants are what makes America America,
But they can't all be here for asylum, and they're being coached.
exactly,
It's crazy.
exactly, or to be future Democratic voters,
Which is what a lot of
which is the goal for the Democrats,
Well,
which is why they're letting them in.
Now, as a lawyer, and obviously a good one who has a lot of experience, what do you think of the recent court case where they got shot down, where they were trying to have them just vote in state and city elections, the illegals? And that was shot down, and then I think they're appealing it now.
They, just like everybody else, you have to be an American citizen to vote. Okay, if you're not an American citizen, it's as easy as pie.
Sure.
You have to be an American citizen to vote. You can't just bring in people and have them voting. I mean, it's bad enough that the Democrats use all these dead people as votes.
Well, we saw a guy who died on D-Day who voted for 2 times, 3
Yeah.
Someone's dog voted.
Absolutely. So, I don't have a problem with them as long as they follow all the steps to becoming an American citizen, become an American citizen, and vote as many as you want. But I also think it's ironic now that the Hispanics, I live in Florida now, and the Cubans that live in Florida, they're all big Trump supporters.
Yes.
And why is that? Because they escaped communism. They don't want a country that tells you what to do.
Nope.
They came here, and many of them swam or were on rafts, probably survived shark attacks
Yeah.
to get here because they wanted liberty and freedom, and they respect that. And I speak to them all the time down in Southern Florida, and they're wonderful people, and they became American citizens, and they vote. And I remember last time in 2020, I believe, Miami-Dade County, which is full of Cuban Americans,
Yes.
had a strong Trump. They voted strongly for Trump. So you have to be a citizen to vote. It's as simple as that.
Sure.
Yeah.
And speaking of the Cuban Americans, we were at the Trump rally a few weeks back in the Bronx, and we had a Cuban American who basically was very upset with socialists and AOC, who was very colorful. He wasn't holding his tongue back. And he had basically told us, socialism is terrible. You wake up with no food, no hope, no money.
Yeah.
I don't want it. I came here to escape that. And
Yeah.
he was very adamant. I'll tell you how bad it is because I've lived it. That's
Yeah.
why I'm here in America, and you don't want it. So
100%.
it's just unfortunate, though, that the younger ones here, even up to higher education, they're being indoctrinated to hate the country,
Yep.
embrace Marxism, socialism, embrace other nations that want to kill us, and that kind of stuff. So it's a tough time we're in right now.
It's a tough time we're in, but I love this country. That's why I fight so hard to keep, people's freedoms intact. Because it is the best country in the world, and there's nothing like it. And we need to fight back. Our forefathers were brilliant with this Constitution, Bill of Rights. I mean, these people were geniuses.
Intellects.
And I want to do anything I could do to maintain the Constitution, to maintain the Bill of Rights, to maintain people's liberties and freedoms. To me, that's very important.
So you're obviously a freedom fighter, not with a rifle, with a military uniform, but with a court docket, and a pen, and you're going in front of justices that are the only people who can uphold or change the law and win
Correct.
or lose. So I think that's important. Being that I'm sure, and I say jokingly, but I'm sure the last governor, the current one, the same for the last and current mayor, I'm sure they're not, so loving of you, and I'm sure that they wish you'd go away and leave them alone. Have you found that you've been maybe censored since then, or people are trying not to hear you? Have you felt like anyone's not trying to have you speak anymore, or do you feel you could still get your voice heard?
I do feel like sometimes I'm censored on Facebook. If I made a comment, it seems like it's not getting out there to people. I will say I haven't had an issue with the mayor or the governor censoring me. But I will say one thing, that I was a regular on Fox News during my work as the anti-shutdown attorney. And ever since I started against the vaccine mandates, in fact, an employee of Fox News told me that I was blacklisted on Fox News, an employee that got fired for not getting the COVID shot.
Wow.
And ever since I've taken my work against the COVID vaccine and protecting people's rights, whether or not to take the COVID vaccine, I have been blacklisted by the media. Except the Post. The Post is not bad.
Sure.
The Post covers all my stories.
And are you the only one, or are there other people fighting the good fight that have also suffered some of this repercussions and trying to be silenced?
Well, the only way I could say is because when I was suing Governor Cuomo, I was on Fox and Friends almost every 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
Giving updates on all my lawsuits. I remember Brian Kilmeade was getting into it all the time because he was against Cuomo. But once that ended and I started attacking the vaccine and the mandates, then I was definitely censored as far as being on national TV or on local TV and not being able to. In fact, I will say this. About a year ago, I was on Fox and Friends with a client, and it was the first time that they actually called me in advance and asked me what the content of what I was going to say.
Which is a little strange,
Which is a
to
little
say the least.
strange.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they wanted to make sure that maybe I didn't see anything negative.
Maybe upset the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah, so I think the people that hate me the most are probably the pharmaceutical industry.
I think that's a given.
Yeah, the New York State Department of Health, maybe the local departments of health, and the New York City Department of Health, because I'm trying to stop their plan of universally vaccinating everybody, even if they don't want it. So I think those are the people, other than the governor and maybe the mayor, because we filed many lawsuits naming him as a defendant, but
He does run the city.
yeah,
So.
he does run the city. So I do think I got censored most once I went against Big Pharma.
And I would say we've seen a lot less of you, unfortunately, since then. And
Yeah.
I'm just going to say, I don't think it's a coincidence.
Yeah.
We reached out to you. You were very accommodating to us. You were very available. You were willing to talk to us. So I can't imagine the bigger guys reaching out to you would shun them. So
Yeah. No, listen, the New York Post, every time I had a story, they covered it, so they will always cover it.
good newspaper.
Yeah, Newsday sometimes, but the Post was always accommodating, but anything on TV was over and done with.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
Because people should hear your story, not just in New York City or New York State or New Jersey where,
Yeah.
where you've been fighting, but throughout the world. They should hear
Yeah.
your story, your customer story, your clients.
Yeah, it's almost like I retired and stopped working, right?
Well, I would say no. You're in a real office with
Yeah.
lots of paperwork, lots of staff, so
Yeah.
you're definitely not retired. You are working.
Yeah.
Let's touch on one more thing, James, if we may. We would talk about this a little bit off camera. Tell the viewers out there who aren't very familiar with it, there's a new law that where basically Governor Hochul can quarantine people without a hearing, without a judge, no due process, my understanding, and put you in a, I don't know, for lack of better words, maybe like a FEMA-style concentration camp, what others have referred to, or a prison camp. Tell the viewers who may not be aware of that how broad her powers would be with that, and what, if anything, you or any other lawyers can or will be doing to challenge this, because a lot of people are concerned.
Yeah, listen, New York State wants an adult vaccine database. Basically, it's probably going to be tied to your driver's license. Wow. And I assume that once this is put in process, that there will be vaccine mandates for adults, vaccines that you're going to have to get. It might still be COVID, the flu, who knows, meningitis, I have no idea. But they want to have a database for adults, and they're going to use this database that if there's a disease or if there's an outbreak of some type of disease, they'll look at this database and they'll say, who doesn't have that vaccine? And that's when they'll round up people and put them in camps without process, without an opportunity.
So you won't go in front of a magistrate?
You're not going to see a judge or a magistrate
no phone calls.
Until God knows.
Wow.
And I have a friend, attorney, who's been fighting this, and I believe her name is Bobby Ann Cox, who's an amazing lawyer, who defeated this at the trial level. She did an amazing job arguing against it, and now she's in the appellate courts because they're not
trying to overturn it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, they're not letting go of this. So I think it's a very important issue. I think it adds to more elements of socialism and communism in this state.
Sounds like something they would do in a third world authority, like Hitler or Mussolini or North Korea, maybe?
I think it's absolutely horrific that someone can knock on your door in the middle of the night and say there's an outbreak and round you up, throw you in a van, and take you to some camp without an opportunity to be heard. And that's what this state wants to do. It may not do it in the next 2 years. It might take them 5 years,
but they want to do it,
or 10 years. But it's in the plans, and it's something that they've been planning for a while.
So, those of us who are tuning in now, you heard what James said. So basically, they may take them a couple of years, 5 years, 2 years, but it looks like they are dead set on accomplishing this.
Correct.
And I mean, I wouldn't even call it a power grab. It's like an absolute third world dictator play, in my opinion, where they're playing God. So for our viewers who are watching, if there aren't sharp lawyers like James who are basically fighting for people's freedoms and rights, and others. He mentioned Bobby Ann, who we'll be speaking with shortly
Yeah.
in the very near future. Who's to stand in the way of government? In this case, we're talking about New York State. But if there's not people like James, who's going to stand in the way to stop that? Because if we don't have lawyers who go to court and challenge it and get judges who, obviously have to side with the law and common sense and our rights, who's going to stop it? Then they could just put us in the gulags.
Correct.
We could all be sitting together soon.
Correct. And
And it's something that's very scary.
And a lot of people, they don't believe that it'll happen until it happens. And stop it, Jim, you're a conspiracy theorist. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But who would have thought that the stuff in COVID happened also? And
Great
it
point.
did happen.
Great point.
So, we just want liberties and freedoms restored. I grew up in New York State, lived here pretty much all my life, and I hate to see the state trending in this direction.
Yeah, we're in a mess.
Yeah.
And besides average Joes, average citizens who own small businesses, you also did represent Staten Island Congressman Joe Borelli regarding some school shutdowns.
Yeah.
Tell us about that, please, because obviously he's of a known person as opposed to maybe some of the businesses we don't know who the owners are. They're not famous or well known.
Actually, that case, I believe, was when Mayor de Blasio was screwing around. There was in-person school, and then a week or so before Thanksgiving, he said, "Oh, we're going to shut down the schools. Thanksgiving's coming. The winter's coming. Christmas is coming. People are going to be socializing, spreading COVID." So we immediately filed a lawsuit on behalf, I think, Borelli.
And he had 12 people, I believe. I saw the article.
Yeah.
And God forbid, he had 12 people at his table for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Sounds like a bad guy.
Yes. and the thing is, we filed it, and within 2 days, the city attorney called me back and said, "Oh, it's going to be, the kids are going to go back to school." So we filed a lawsuit, and then just a couple of days later, that the kids went back to school.
And obviously, I think on behalf of the freedom of the citizens here, not just your particular clients and yourself, I think it's a lot, says something that you could sometimes just file things. And you said Cuomo was more reasonable than Hochul. And he would say, hey, you know what? Maybe he does it late on a Friday, but he'll release a press conference and
Yeah.
say, hey, that's it. We're not going to proceed with this because you rattled him enough to start the legal process that I guess he didn't want to roll the dice with a judge.
I know people think I'm crazy for saying this, but Governor Cuomo was much more reasonable than anybody we have in government now.
Listen, you've
and
dealt with both of them.
I never thought I'd long for Governor Cuomo to be our governor again. And he was a smart. Listen, maybe it got to him a little bit, the whole COVID thing with his press conferences every day, for him getting Emmy awards and all this other stuff.
Writing a book.
Writing a book. But as far as government goes, he was definitely the most qualified over anybody that we have here now, whether it's state, local, anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, he was a seasoned politician, held a lot of positions.
Yep.
Unfortunately, the governor we have here, I like to call her our by-accident governor.
Yeah.
Where she was just a number 2, and I guess she got lucky that he had a lot of sexual scandals and had to resign. And
Yep.
when you're number 2, you get bumped up to number 1 if
Yeah.
the number 1 person is not there. So,
Yeah.
and a lot of people have said that even if they're not big fans of either of the last or the current governor, that he was more pragmatic, more reasonable, more easier to negotiate or deal with. And she seems to be a woman who is obviously the most powerful person in any state is the governor, so she's the most powerful person. But she seems to be a woman who is dug in. She's ready to slug it out. She doesn't have much, wiggle room to negotiate, and she's in for a fight, as opposed to Cuomo, who might say, "Oh wow, James is going to take me to court. I'll stop it. I'll change my mind and reconsider it." But she seems like she got her hands up and she's ready to, go 10, 12 rounds with you.
Yeah. Listen, I also think that Governor Cuomo I think he was thinking about his political future as well. And I'm thinking maybe he wanted a more prominent position, maybe down the road more of a...
Well, he has ambitions for presidency. We know that.
So maybe also he wasn't as hardlined as because he was thinking about his future. Maybe he didn't want to be that governor that was just, ruining the state for everybody. I mean, he did a lot of ruin, and if it wasn't for filing lawsuits, who knows where we would be right now. But I think he had higher aspirations too, and those contributed to his decisions as well.
No,
I
well
think.
said.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to just touch on something else that I was talking about the other day with Zahar, who's a producer, cameraman. So we've been doing a lot of coverage about the city of yes, where pretty much the developers can get a check mark and say yes, put up a 20-story building, one family residential area, etc. So on in commercial stuff, factories. We were recently told that the loophole or the way to get around that is to start a community of 2,000 people, some type of like an incorporation, almost like a tenants association, homeowners association. Do you see anything like this where people in the future may have to try that back door with any future regulations or mandates for vaccines or anything like this that would maybe related to the pandemic? Excuse me.
Listen, I do think I will say this right now that a lot of people in New York, and it's not even Republican Democrat issue, just common sense people, whether Democrats or Republicans, I think it's going to be difficult to fool these people again after everything that happened here in COVID. I think they're going to be better prepared. I think they're going to call bullshit a lot quicker, and
Maybe call you a lot quicker too for help.
yeah, or a lot quicker for help as well. But I do believe I noticed a trend. Like a lot of people that were mandated these COVID shots, and they saw the greed of big pharma. Now they're saying their kids going to college. You know what? We don't want my kid to get any more vaccines. We don't trust big pharma. So can you consult with us on getting him religiously cleared, for college, so he doesn't have to get vaccines? And these are people that believed in vaccines and believed in everything prior to COVID. And I think COVID just changed them. And I'm seeing this a lot. And obviously you're going to get your pro-COVID people and your pro-vax people. You're not going to change them unless, God forbid, somebody has a stroke or a side effect from the vaccine in their family, because that has opened up a lot of eyes, believe it or not, as well.
And there is no recourse for that, right?
There is no recourse. You can't sue the vaccination
So
company.
if you grow a third arm or a second head,
That's it. There's nothing you can do. But I do believe that the people woke up, and I hope that this trend continues. And I hope that if, God forbid, there's another pandemic or another vaccine, that people will act differently than they acted initially. Listen, we were all scared.
yeah,
We were all
100%.
scared. But and I'm pretty much hopeful that people will act differently if they have to go through this again.
And obviously, we spoke about Big Pharma, tremendous amount of lobbying, tremendous amount of donations to a lot of elected officials throughout, the country.
Of course.
So they do wield a big hammer.
Big hammer.
Influence.
Yes.
So I personally believe, and I spoke to a lot of people, and that the influence and the money that they have in that industry does weigh in on what these politicians, especially here in New York, are saying. They'd want to be more pro-vaccine if these people are returning the favor by donations or, assisting them in some way. And unfortunately, when you're fighting for people's, rights and liberties, you're unfortunately fighting almost like a David and Goliath, because you're going against an industry that has, I don't want to say unlimited money, but a tremendous amount of resources where, they can sprinkle that money around to politicians and get another 100 James on the other side to fight you. And,
Correct.
You're one guy, one law firm, and obviously there's other lawyers, fighting with you for, different things. But it's got to be a daunting task when you think of, when you have to say, wow, I'm going against, in essence, a pharmacy industry, which
Correct.
has billions of dollars at their disposal that unfortunately you and me and your clients, don't have.
Correct.
So it's tough.
It's not easy. It's not easy, but it's worth the fight. It's a good fight. I've seen from my own two eyes serious side effects from the vaccine. People that are perfectly healthy, all of a sudden they have cancer, or if they have blood clotting, or they have
Tumors.
or strokes. Perfectly healthy people. So, you shouldn't. I mean, you shouldn't be forced a vaccine anyway, let alone one that there's been absolutely no testing, and that was rushed.
Yeah.
So, it's, this whole thing where, all the controversy with a tennis player like Novak Djokovic, where he couldn't go to Australia, or he couldn't go to the United States to play in the U.S. Open.
There's a few basketball players too. I think the Nets. That
Yeah,
were fighting
Kyrie
the-
Irving.
Yeah,
Yeah. Believe it or not, there's a lot more that were hush hush.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that really pissed me off is LeBron James, his son Bronny, as a as a college freshman, had like a serious heart condition. And I'm almost certain that was caused by a vaccine. No 19-year-old kid,
Good health.
healthy kid, your father's an elite basketball player,
Very physically fit.
yeah, is going to have a heart condition. So I think it would have been an opportunity for someone like LeBron James, who carries a lot of weight,
Oh yeah.
to say, what are these vaccines that, or that I regret allowing my son to get something like this, or making the connection, and that kind of bothers me because there was an opportunity there.
To use the bully puppet,
Yep.
and he didn't.
He
And,
didn't do
he
it.
speaks. The world listens. He's a
Yeah,
very famous,
exactly.
very famous player.
Exactly.
I want to touch on something else. We've all seen the hearings of very recently where Dr. Anthony Fauci was brought into Washington and had to get grilled again. What are your thoughts on that? It looks like there was a lot of things uncovered, or to be say it in a nice way, maybe he's changed his tune since the first time he went into Congress and spoke with them. What was your take on how that all unfolded? I think it was just last week.
Yeah, it's what we all knew. I still remember the picture of Anthony Fauci at a Washington Nationals baseball game
Without the mask. Yeah.
without the mask,
Yeah, I
and
remember
he
that.
was telling everybody they need to wear the mask.
6 feet.
6
But he's
feet.
sitting next to two people.
He's sitting next to people. He's got the mask off. He's
Drinking
having
a
a
beer.
good. Is having a good time at a baseball game. The guy's a fraud. The guy's a fraud, and he got away with murder. To be honest with you, to me, he committed major crimes and atrocities.
Financial atrocities too. Yeah.
Financial, health. He destroyed a lot of families. He destroyed a lot of businesses. And quite frankly, there's a place in hell for this guy because he definitely ruined a lot of families, and he lied. He lied.
And to give one person that much power is, in my opinion,
incredible.
a little bit crazy. Because there was so many other known doctors.
And I do blame Trump a little bit. He could have fired him earlier, And listen, I'll tell you, there are doctors. Stanford University had a couple of doctors that spoke up against the COVID.
Dr. McKay also goes on Fox, I think. I see.
Dr. McCary.
McCary, sorry. McCary.
Yeah. We had an amazing doctor from Yale University that gave an affidavit in our lawsuits. Phenomenal doctor.
Top-notch medical school.
Yeah. And there were two from Stanford University, Dr. Bhattacharya, and there's Ioannidis. He's a Greek doctor from Stanford University. They all spoke.
No top school.
Yeah, they all spoke against the mandates, against the vaccine. And
They got stifled. They pushed them to the.
Yeah. One was put on sabbatical. A lot of them were getting pressure to keep their mouths shut.
Yep.
And I know that for a fact because that's what they told me. I'm not going to name names, but it was a big hoax.
And you
The
know
entire
what?
thing.
We don't see those people on TV anymore at all.
No, you don't.
We used to see them every night almost
Yeah.
on several networks and the newspaper. Now, come to think of it, I can't remember the last time I read or saw one of them on a talk show.
They don't want them on there.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't want people informed about this entire thing. And these were big crimes against humanity, as far as I'm concerned. The whole COVID thing was a major crime against humanity. And it was perpetrated by everybody. And everybody is guilty. Everybody in local government, state government, everybody's guilty of this.
No,
The only person that handled it well was DeSantis.
yeah, Florida stayed open. They thrived.
Yep.
They're still thriving.
Yep.
There was, I don't know if you saw it, but there was something around, give or take a year ago, where there was one of the CNN producers sitting down with someone with a secret camera, and he pretty much admitted no one's going to be able to fool with the COVID. What's the next thing? The next thing we're going to do is climate lockdown. Do you believe that something like that, or climate lockdown, is they're going to try? Because people are waking up, like you said. Do you think that's a possibility, or is it going to be climate, your opinion, or something else maybe? Because they're not going to stop trying to control everybody.
Listen, they saw after COVID how they can control a population. Okay? These people are greedy. They're not going to stop. I don't know. It might be climate, it might be bird flu, it might be whatever.
Squirrel flu?
Squirrel flu. Who knows what it's going to be?
But something.
Something else is going to happen, without a doubt.
And in your
it
heart-
was too easy.
You don't believe in your heart of hearts they're going to stop at the COVID. They're going to keep pushing this agenda.
Oh no, they're going to keep pushing this agenda. Yeah, we're run by some very evil people right now.
I would agree with you.
Yeah.
And you can see the state of our state and the state of our city.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, not just with COVID, but obviously took a toll on us.
These people no more. They don't have people's best interests in mind, and that's the troubling part. That that's the fight. You hear these crazy stories every day, and you just can't believe that this is happening in America.
And to those poor businesses, those poor people who lost their jobs and didn't get the back pay, didn't get reinstated, or didn't get a chance to stay open and generate revenue. Unfortunately, they have no recourse. Those
No.
bars, those pool halls, those strip, whatever business you were in,
Yeah.
whatever profession you were in, those people who got put on ice, they unfortunately can't reach out to you or another attorney and take any recourse. They're gonna have to take the hit,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
a lot of those people will never and have never recovered.
No,
Unfortunately,
they have
so
not.
it's
No.
like we were in Woodside, where I have a lot of the Irish bars. We're kind of Roosevelt Avenue meets Queens Boulevard. Just within the last month, and there were so many restaurants, the long-term businesses closed. So many places that serve food and beverage for rent, out of business. Blacked out the windows, and it was crazy because that was once a thriving little restaurant area.
Correct.
And I would say 40% of them, maybe half, we saw were out of business for sale, for rent, just storefronts that weren't operating.
Correct. Yeah.
And unfortunately, some of those people won't recover, and those businesses will not be coming back.
That's what I thought. These are crimes against humanity, and not only financial, but forcing people to get these COVID shots against their will is a major crime against humanity, as far as I'm concerned.
Now, James, before we let you go, is there anything else you'd like to share with us, or any other cases you're currently involved in that you want to update us on? Any particular industries maybe you're representing, or particular workers? But you mentioned the police was a big.
Well, I'm still right now. We're filing state and city human rights
Okay.
lawsuits for workers that were still terminated. There is a 3-year statute of limitations
Oh wow.
from the time you were terminated. So if you were fired, you have 3 years from the date that you were fired.
2021.
So you would have, see, if you were fired in November of 21, right after the mandate, you would have until November of 24 to file a human rights lawsuit. So that's what we're filing, a lot of human rights lawsuits now, to try to get back pay, try to get reinstatement.
And are these city courts or federal courts or state?
Some are federal and some are state courts.
Okay.
Yeah.
So depending on where they work.
Yeah,
and the
so we work,
situation.
I represent a lot of employees. I mean, it's crazy. Some of my clients, they're working remotely and still were terminated for not getting the vaccine.
Remotely?
Remotely. They're
I haven't
working
heard
from
that
home.
one yet. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. I'm telling you, stay with me one day, you're going to hear the craziest stuff. They worked from their homes, yet they were mandated the COVID vaccine, and if they didn't get the COVID vaccine, they were terminated.
So working from home, and I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but correct me if I'm wrong, you have no contact with other employees.
No.
Since you're in your own home,
Yeah.
remotely, yet you still are required to get the vaccine.
Yeah.
And if you didn't, you got axed.
You got axed.
Is that lunacy?
It's lunacy.
How many of those clients do you have, more
I
or
have
less?
5 of those at different
agencies.
Yeah.
So pretty much across the board, people were saying, hey, work from home, but get vaccinated. If you refused, even though you couldn't get anyone sick or they couldn't get you sick, you were still had to adhere to them. If not, you were chopped.
Correct.
Wow. That's
crazy.
That's crazy.
Yep.
That really is something.
Yeah.
James, if the people wanted to reach out to you, whether they're a business, whether they're an individual, or anything else that you might be able to represent, tell the viewers, please, how they can reach you, where your firm is located, the name of the firm, all that stuff, so they can
Okay.
Google you and find you.
All right. The name of my firm is the Mermigis Law Group, PC. I'm located at 85 Cold Spring Road, Syosset, New York, 11791. The best way to set up an appointment is to email my paralegal, Kim, and her email is kim@mermigislaw.com, and that's MERMIGIS law.com. She's amazing. She gets back to people quickly, and she sets up appointments. And, for any matter, any legal matter, we do consultations, or if we can't help you, we'll refer you to a highly skilled attorney that can handle your case.
All right, so stand-up guy. He's fighting the good fight for the citizens here in the city and the state, and he was very honest that if we can't help you, we'll send you to someone else that can.
Yep.
So he's obviously not looking to take on caseloads that aren't his expertise.
We're already super busy.
He's
so
busy. He is very busy. Trust me, I can tell you, he's
Yeah.
very busy. So we appreciate James Mermigis for sitting down with us today on a Friday out of all times, and we hope in the very near future we can come back and maybe get an update on the litigation, the battles, and basically all the fights on behalf of the citizens and your personal clients.
Anytime, Peter. You're welcome here anytime.
James, thank you very much, my
Thank
friend.
you.
My
Thank
Greek
you.
cousin,
Thank
Yasu.
you. Yasu.
Appreciate it. You
Thank
heard
you.
From James, fighting the good fight, guys. So if you do need his help, on a serious note, look him up. And if he can't help you for whatever issue you need, he'll be a gentleman and refer you to somebody who can. Peter Koufalis, Queen's Voice. I appreciate everybody tuning in today. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe if you haven't. And follow James as well. He's fighting the good fight. Very interesting man, doing some very important litigation on behalf of all of us. Take care, guys. Have a nice weekend.